Joining us to discuss the recent political developments this morning is Professor Aries Arugay of the UP Department of Political Science. Good morning, Professor, and thanks for being here on the show. Okay, Professor, I think you're on mute, so let's double check that. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning. Sorry about that.
Ayan. That's all right, Prof. Well, it's been another eventful week for Philippine politics, from resignations, executive sessions, and another set of charges and recommendations, pero no convictions yet. But let's start first with the resignation of Babe Singson from the ICI. What do you make of that, Professor?
Yes, while Secretary Singson said that the work continues and this does not really affect supposedly the integrity and the work, but at the practical level, of course, it does, because whoever will replace him, there'll be a learning curve as well. He will not, or she will not be on the same page as Secretary Singson. But I think the larger picture here is public perception. I think that's very important at this stage of this already long-drawn process of seeking accountability. Secretary Singson is the member of the ICI that used to head the DPWH, and therefore has a keen eye and institutional memory on how the department works. And therefore, of all the members of the ICI, he is the expert on infrastructure, and therefore it will be it is a great loss on his supposed resignation. But while he's saying it has something to do with physical health, which is of course completely understandable, he also mentioned a list of sources of his discontent on the entire process. It has something to do with the disempowered nature of the ICI. It has something to do with the lack of cooperation of seeking information, which is what they are doing to critical actors or people involved in the process. So while he's saying health, I think the public can see through that. The idea here is that the ICI needs to be a better institution for it to be able to deliver its mandate.
Well, you did mention public perception, Professor, and all. What's the implication of this resignation? Will that add more fuel to the fire, to the discontent of the public, to the doubts that they already have with the credibility of these investigations?
It certainly does not help. It certainly doesn't enhance whatever the ICI is doing. Let's remember, while they expressed the acceptance, I think they were, my inkling is that they were more pressured to have the hearings online or on public, on live. Let's remember that it took them a while. They said they have to set up technology, but this doesn't also add or inspire confidence to the work of the ICI. That's one. Second is the idea that anyone that they ask, they cannot really summon. No? But unlike other investigative bodies, anyone they ask or requested to show up and give information can go under or take exception at the public nature of the hearings or the live streaming and invoke executive session, as what we have seen from members of the House who have appeared in the ICI this week. So I think this resignation adds on to the pile of issues concerning the ICI. And one thing is for sure, what the public seem to be thinking about now is that the I in the ICI, the independence that is supposed to be important, is not really there.
But do you think, Professor, that this resignation of Secretary Babe Singson as commissioner from the ICI would trigger even more resignations, would trigger instability? And at this point, what can the ICI do to restore the public's trust in them? I mean, you did mention already, they gave in to that demand for live streaming, for transparency, but at the same time, they're granting executive sessions, so we don't really get to see what's happening in these hearings.
Right. I think one grievance of Secretary Singson is that they've become the institution to blame for this entire, like they're the ones that are being made accountable for this accountability campaign or crusade, which is, I think, a bit unfair, because let's remember that this commission, while it's called independent, was only created by an executive order and has no binding powers in order to really get to the bottom of this. What is needed. I also think that the ICI operates on, for me, a very sinister legal system. If you notice, Secretary Singson even made the idea that came up with the idea that in countries like Singapore and Hong Kong, there's only one body that investigates everything. That even that is where you file the cases. That is where they render judgment. Instead of being these scattered institutions like what we have, right? We have COA, we have Ombudsman, we have Sandigan Bayan, we have the Supreme Court, and the rest. So that's one thing. The second is, I think, the idea of the ICI being blamed, as I've said, being a bit unfair, because it was only given incomplete powers. And this is why I think the what should have been done, and this is the shoulda, woulda, coulda part, is Congress should have passed a binding law. If both the House and the Senate and the majorities within these two chambers of our legislature, whose members are being implicated, allegedly, if the entire institution, both institutions, are really serious about investigating this, they would have thrown their weight and lend support, because there are pending bills on really establishing an independent commission that is not only independent, but more importantly, empowered and capacitated to really do the work that is necessary for this accountability campaign to succeed.
And I guess that's also really the question of everyone, right, Professor? I mean, there's already that bill proposing the ICAIC, and people are also waiting for the president to certify it as urgent, and yet it's being stalled, or there's been delays in the passing of this bill. But let's go to the executive sessions that were held this week in the ICI. How should we interpret, Professor, the contrast between Sandro Marcos, the presidential son, and Pulong Duterte, or Sandro Marcos attending, facing the ICI, and Pulong Duterte not appearing before the ICI?
Well, for me, that's not surprising. I mean, I would have been surprised if Representative Duterte attended the ICI. But I think what is happening right now is that this entire corruption scandal is already being used in this polarized dynastic feud between the Marcoses and the Dutertes, unfortunately. And I said unfortunately because supposed to be, there should be no political colors as far as seeking accountability against corruption is concerned. I mean, at the end, who is really going to benefit if we get rid of corruption? It's the entire Philippine society, regardless of what your political leanings are. But what we're seeing is that this corruption investigation, this corruption crusade by the government is being seen through the prism of political affiliations, loyalties, and colors. So we know for a fact that the Duterte dynasty have already casted doubt on this entire campaign, especially if this campaign goes as far back as during the previous administration. On the other hand, those who are loyal or those who are part of the Marcos camp would also use this and for political and partisan agenda. So unfortunately, we don't really see this process being independent of political colors, and I think this is the one that's also contributing to why there's this discontent about this entire thing, because at this moment napupolitika na yung proseso na hindi naman dapat.
Right. Well, it's been 5 months already, Professor, since the president sounded the alarm on this flood control scandal with that Mahiya naman kayo speech during his SONA. I wanted to ask, what is the political narrative dominating public discourse right now? Because At the beginning, you have the president being sort of the whistleblower in this whole scandal, right? But now there are groups calling for his resignation. People are asking for his accountability in this whole process. When did public sentiment start to shift?
I think we should not blame the public for being impatient, because the expectations were high, because the president himself exposed this. So, Pauline, it's the most powerful political official in the country exposed this, and it's the first to be exasperated, to publicly express exasperation. So, if you have the most powerful official that is supposed to be discontented with the extent of corruption, and it's been 5 months and nothing is being done, what does that symbolize, right? Is the corruption issue bigger than the powers of the president? Is that really what is being what is the narrative? What the narrative is? The idea here is, and this is why somehow it's not yet a complete boomerang, but the president is also getting flack from this, because while in the beginning there was none, right? Let's remember, there was none. The president was not being dragged into this because, to give him credit, he really blew the whistle on this, right? And credibly so, he was able to first show resolve. But following up on that resolve, I think, is where the administration is lagging, and this is where that he needs to pick up the pace, the government. And while Malacanang can say, "Oh, the ICI is independent," in Philippine politics, if the president really wants to move things forward, it will move forward. He has all the tools. He is the president, so therefore, this discontent and public perceptions unavoidably goes back to him, and therefore he mentioned that this is really the country is bleeding. I could not agree more, and therefore it needs to be, before the healing part, it really needs to address the wound, and I would even say not just a wound, this cancer that is corruption.
So the president did compare this to like removing cancer. It's like a major surgery that needs to be done, and so it will really take a lot of work. But what do you make, Professor, of the messaging of the administration as well? You have PCO Secretary Dave Gomez saying they're nearing the end game when it comes to solving this corruption scandal. Do they have control of the narrative? Because some critics also say when President Marcos started this, it was some sort of inoculation, right? For his administration to regain public trust. But now, there's that survey of WR Numero where the performance rating of the president is at its lowest. So is there still any viable path for President Marcos to regain public trust and improve his numbers?
Right. Well, the quick fix to this is to really show concrete, substantive outcomes. This year should not end with the current status quo. And the promise of the administration, right? Some are very sound bites in caliber, like maraming hindi magpapasko, no, maraming magpapasko sa kulungan ngayong darating na Pasko. Anong petsa na, no? Ilang linggo na lang Pasko na, no? But we haven't really seen the big fish. Nakikita natin yung mga maliliit na isda, dilis, sapsap. So therefore, Malacanang and the communications team of the president can only spin this so much, because if there are really no concrete results, no amount of spinning can really change public perceptions. And I hope the government would be really in touch with the public's perception and how they view things, because sometimes, if you are in power, you don't really get a sense of what the public's views are. And the disjunct between what the government believes and what the public believes, if this is greater and greater, then it would be very difficult for the president to regain the popularity that he had when he assumed office. Let's remember, this president was elected by a majority of the electorate, and he has set up huge expectations. And therefore, if there's public discontent, it is because you set up those big expectations. And while the performance is lagging, so this gap should be addressed, and if not, then it would be very difficult for the president to recover.
Well, some do say his last 2 years, the last 2 years of his term is all about political survival already. But looking ahead to 2028, Professor Aries, what scenarios are you seeing? How exactly is the opposition benefiting from this? When I say opposition, we're talking about the pro-Dutertes, the Dutertes. And they're actually emerging as a front runner in the 2028 national elections. What scenarios are you seeing?
Right. Well, it's still very early to say. And let's remember, if we look at our previous electoral cycles, the winning presidential candidate did not really figure out until the early part of the presidential election season. Right? Let's remember, for example, for 2016. Then Mayor Rodrigo Duterte was not even in the scenario as early as late 2015. So
Right.
There's still a lot of time. There's still a lot of developments that need. So I would not bet that what we're seeing right now in terms of the landscape of the 2028 elections is already cast in stone or is already something figurative. And I ask the public to really be critical and mindful that these surveys should not condition our minds on what will be the political arena in 2028, because surveys don't determine our politics. It should be the votes of the people. And if the people wanted to vote for someone, even if they're not in the winning circles of surveys, they can do that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us this morning. I wish we had more time to break down other things, but for now, thank you, Professor Aries Arugay of the UP Department of Political Science.
Thank you, Pauline.